Hello and welcome back to the NWR Virtual Investor Conference. I'm Andrew Gagan from AusBiz. And something a little different next from our company, Lab Group. It is privately held, and the company's lab form has continued to be refined as a constantly improving customer acquisition platform for financial services providers. Originally, Lab Group's founders started by building custom solutions for customer acquisition, which quickly transformed into a specialist business providing core software as a service products, LabForm and Application Manager. And just a reminder, if you would like to ask questions at the end of this presentation, do so by using the Q&A panel on your screen. Well, let me now introduce the Chief Executive, Nick Baldry, and the co-founder and CTO of Lab Group, Lyndon Webster. Nick.
Hi guys, how are you? So as we said before, Lab Group really started about 10 years ago, and we completely stumbled into the business. Lyndon and I were running a small IT consulting firm, and we actually got asked to build an online application process for a full service stockbroker, which had to deal with quite a lot of complexities when it actually comes to onboarding, in particular complex entities, dealing with advisor channels and things like that. So we built that online application form. And then what happened is that stockbroker actually subsequently went out of business. So we lost our only client. But then some other brokers started to approach us and say, hey, look, we really like the online application form that you built. Could you build us something? We can't pay you much money. So I said to them, well, we'll provide you an online application framework that we host. We'll brand it, and we'll charge you some money for every single application that completes in the system. So that was kind of the beginning, and it was almost, we were just solving the fundamental problem of digitizing onboarding, right? So digitizing AML, automating things, the end-to-end data capture process, doing electronic identity verification. So that was really the problem that we were solving initially, and we started to do this for a few different organizations. And then after about the 8th or 9th organization, we suddenly got the idea that, you know, you can standardize onboarding across industry, because fundamentally everyone's got to do very, very similar things. At its core, there's obviously AML, but there's other things in relation to products and services in different financial services sector that have to do the same thing. So if you're an equity stockbroker provider, everyone's got to deal with settlement details. Everyone's got to deal with CHESS sponsorship. If you're a fund manager, everyone's got to deal with the trades, how much you're investing, and that sort of stuff. So that's how we kind of got the idea. And then our 13th customer was actually Macquarie Bank, and that kind of took us to the next level. So after 10 years in growing the business organically, we actually back in February did our first ever capital raise. So that was from Costa Asset Management. So we completed that in February. Again, first ever capital raise. We were growing the business organically. Prior to that, it was Lyndon and myself as co-founders. And then we brought Marnie, who was the head of product at Iris, into the business about 2 years ago, and she's now our chief operating officer. And Vesta, as our CFO, came into the business initially as a consultant to help with the capital raise. And once we closed that capital raise with Costa, Vesta became CFO of the business. Lisa Whitmore, who's the CEO of Costa Asset Management, has joined our board as non-executive director. So the board is currently Lyndon, myself, and Lisa. We are looking to grow the board. We're actually on the hunt at the moment for an independent director. So we are looking to strengthen our board over the next sort of year or so. Just to give you some context of the actual product in the market. So an example of the LabForm implementation. So we really split our products in two. One is LabForm, and LabForm is the customer onboarding framework that we deploy onto our hosted environment that consumers use to apply into financial services product. And we like to call it an account opening platform, because at Lab, we're not just about AML, KYC, we're about account opening. We're about, you use Lab as a platform to get your money into financial services in the most efficient, straight-through process possible. And just an example of how that journey begins. This is an example of Macquarie Bank. I'm on the Macquarie website. I click apply now. I'm launched into the Macquarie application process for a cash management account. So you're actually looking at an implementation of LabForm now. branded and customized for Macquarie with the required entity types enabled. It's actually a multi-product platform. So if I change CMA to say to term deposit, within the same platform, we can run multiple product workflows. So the platform is very scalable because you kind of have your core AML, KYC flows, and then you can scale up your products and services offered within those. As you can see, just a few other implementations of the product in the market. For example, the Host Plus implementation is just open to it's the Host Plus Self-Managed Invest, so it's the SMI. It's only available to trust SMSFs with corporate or individual trustees. So in that case, you can only select between those two. It's completely stylized and branded for the particular organization. And these are just some other examples, but fundamentally the same platform. The point about the platform is that it is a business-to-business single build software as a service. So it's completely uniform in the way that it's multi-tenanted, and the one code instance supports these different organizations, which makes us incredibly scalable when it comes to applying changes in a wholesale way across the LabForm framework. The other way to initiate applications is through what we call an application manager. So this is like a back-end login where desk assistants, advisors can log into the LabForm framework, and they can click on new, and let's just say I can pick an owner of the application. If I'm an advisor's assistant, I can pick an owner, I can click continue. So I can launch an application in what we call an advisor mode. So that allows an advisor to pre-complete what they can of the application and draft the application, and then collaborate with the end client in terms of people viewing that application and coming into that application and picking up where the advisor left off effectively. So that's the other channel that we addressed back in the day very early. We realized that, for these complex entities, high wealth individuals, they're just not going to necessarily go to a website and open an account. Direct investment is becoming more popular for those complex entities, which we're enjoying. But at the same time, a lot of the flow and the wealth flow comes through advisor channels. So we were very keen to support that sort of channel and sales cycle. The application manager is actually white labelable as well. So we've got hundreds of advisors that actually log into this. They can actually use LabForm to register as an advisor themselves through an individual application process in LabForm. And they can log into this as an advisor, and they can, in their white label application manager, because they could be external advisors in an organization. So just on LabForm itself, I've covered quite a lot of that in that overview. Multiple products, multi-channel, customized branding, electronic identity verification. So what we've done is we've built some middleware that LabForm talks to, and then LabForm is connected to a number of electronic identity verification providers and sources. So when an application completes in LabForm, we go after middleware and we connect into all these different providers depending on what we're doing. So say, for example, it's a resident of China, we'll go through our middleware. We might go to Truly You, which runs a global gateway 2 product that has a Chinese source, and we can connect into that Chinese data verification source. So you can see we've covered the gamut of what you need to do when it comes to AML, KYC, know your business, know your trust. So identity verification, corporate registrars. What's actually missing here is we also do the self-managed super fund ABN verification as well. So you can do an end-to-end trust self-managed super fund application in Lab with a corporate trustee. You can pre-populate all your company details, and you can have that application completely verified. So the individuals that are the corporate, the directors of the corporate trustee, the corporate trust itself, the ABN, the trust verification using the ABN super fund lookup service. And that is a completely straight through process that will then connect that into downstream systems and establish that account and allow for instant funding. And that was the last point here, account establishment integrations, which I'll cover off in a later slide. In terms of the application manager, I mentioned that before. I'm not going to spend too much more time on it, but it is highly integratable into your ecosystem in terms of an organization. So for example, you'll have organizations that have an existing advisor portal. Advisors log into that. They may want to manage their applications, so they can click manage, and then we have single sign-on where they can single sign-on into the branded application manager. So we can very, very seamlessly extend the product onto existing systems. In terms of clients, as I said, we started in full service stockbroking. We are currently servicing around about 100 organizations across a lot of different industry verticals. And this is the thing that's very unique about Lab Group. A lot of vendors out there are very focused on individual verticals, and no one from managed funds has heard of the vendors in the space for superannuation, for example. So it's because we've got that kind of wholesale view of the market, we can get a lot of learnings from what different sectors are having to deal with. Some are on different technology paths in terms of some are more up to date with technology, some are still sort of catching up. From a regulatory perspective, you know, if we take design distribution obligations coming up as an example in October, that might be applicable to one vertical. So we'll run round tables within that vertical, and we'll come up with an upgrade path, our roadmap being dictated by our own, what we call compliance radar, which listens to the market, listens to customers, runs round tables, listens to compliance announcements. We have our own compliance professionals, and we upgrade that onboarding as a service platform as a wholesale upgrade. And that really leads to a lot of value add for the whole industry, where, you know, rather than 100 organizations having to wrap their head around DDO and figure out what they need to do to their onboarding and digitized process and worrying about doing the business analysis and upgrade it, we just work as professionals in this space, knowing exactly what we're doing. We've done it for 10 years, and we upgrade the platform accordingly to suit that requirement, and then deploy that out to our customer landscape. So that's, we've processed around 2 million applications to date. So again, a very robust platform, tens of thousands of applications completing on a monthly basis across our clients in aggregate, gives us a lot of anonymized data to improve the platform and analyze the market as to how we can sort of improve things going forward. As a business, we have a very strong enterprise pipeline, but we have pricing for all tiers of customers. We have 3 tiers of customers, and we've really refined the pricing of the platform so that we can suit the small startup fintech or challenger bank that's just got their ratty license and they want to kind of get to market quickly in a relatively simple scope. The other thing I'll say about the product as well is, in addition to SSO, it is highly, you can integrate with it very effectively. So just leading to this slide, I'm just going to skip over a slide. I'll go back to that one. One of the things we've done with Lab over time is obviously we've worked with organizations deploying LabForm, and then we've said to an organization, well, okay, we're deploying your LabForm, and they say, hey, look, well, we use Premium as a downstream system, or we use Iris, or hey, we clear and settle through FinClear. So what we've gradually done with each implementation is we've worked through those integrations. So we've built out over time a lot of comprehensive integration adapters into the ecosystem of different vendor tools that different industry verticals need. And that is why we're all about straight through account opening and really becoming an onboarding gateway and a standardized gateway for the industry. So for example, if we implement with a stockbroker, clearing settles through FinClear, maybe they use Premium for their portfolio management system, maybe they use Macquarie for their cash management account. We can plonk LabForm in there, brand it, and we can activate all those integration adapters to talk into those relevant systems and processes and products. I will just talk about the cash account aspect. So we have the hookup to the Macquarie cash management account. So an example of that is if you're a stockbroker and you say, I want a new Macquarie cash management account for settlement as part of your LabForm application process, we will automatically push that through to Macquarie's LabForm application process. Because we have a standardized platform, the really compelling thing about this business and why it's really exciting after 10 years deploying it out and getting enough of a network effect happening is that we're starting to see some synergies around replication of data within that network to suit the needs of the participants. So I've got a product I'm offering, maybe it's a SMSF administration tool. I need a trading account off the back of that, and I need a cash account off the back of that. We can very seamlessly facilitate that through LabForm. I'll talk about the transfer agency businesses that we're working with. So State Street, Citi, Link Fund Solutions. We signed up Citi, for example, in 2017. So these are sort of one-to-many relationships. So what that basically means in the real world is that if I have, sorry, my Zoom thing's blocking my browser here. where am I? So if you take Pinnacle as an example, you've got Pinnacle as an online application process. I'm investing into a Pinnacle fund run by Citi, for example, from a transfer agency perspective. So the back end is seamlessly connected into Citi's registry platform, which is PAXIS, Pacific Fund Systems. So we're seamlessly integrated to that. But what we can do is spin up white labels within instances. So we can kind of distribute lab form down to suit the needs of investment managers and boutiques as well within one investment manager. But what we've done, we've established these enterprise relationships in their infancy, really. State Street, relatively new, Citi back in 2017, Link back in 2016. And they are effectively deploying lab form to the market for their clients, for their fund manager clients. And they have that seamlessly bolted into their registry system. In terms of Iris Xplan, we've got something really exciting going on with that at the moment. So LabForm is a core, 100 instances out there. We have two APIs. We have the initiation API and we have the completion API. The completion API is to get data out of LabForm. As you can imagine, that's heavily used because it's an onboarding channel funnel, and obviously the data needs to go somewhere into downstream systems, CRMs, and so forth. But the exciting thing about the Initiate API is the Initiate API allows us to receive data into any LabForm instance, any of those clients across our 100 client base from another client record data source. So if I'm an advisor, I log into Xplan, I can see my client record in Xplan, and I say, I want to apply for a Shaw's equities account for this client. I can hit a button and it pushes the client information from the Xplan client record via the Initiate API into LabForm. So it spins up a pre-populated LabForm application within the LabForm framework. And that is obviously very seamless for an advisor, and it's very seamless for the client as well. So avoiding all this double data entry. And then once you're in the LabForm network, you get all that good straight through processing off the back end of it. So setups into downstream systems, electronic identity verification, digital signing, digital disclosure of based on product selection, all that good stuff. Just going back to our growth over time. So you can see that we started 10 years ago and it was a little trickle of applications. I can remember getting pretty excited back in 2010 when the first couple of applications came through. Went and bought myself a coffee. It's pretty much all I could afford. So, and then as we sort of grew over time, we have obviously layered on customers. And you can see it's been fairly steady growth. But yeah, more recently, since 2019, we've had a real explosion. I think we've just really hit a critical mass of customers. And in terms of our product market fit, our product is extremely well refined now. We've gone through organic 9-10-year iterations of this platform to get it to where it is. And it's really the point now where we can very seamlessly and efficiently quickly roll it out to the enterprise level through to the smaller level. Obviously, what's exciting is that we've got more participants potentially entering the market under tranche 2. And with COVID in the last couple of years, we've all seen what's happened to trading volumes. And we've certainly seen that in terms of volumes coming through our platform on aggregate. So that just gives you an idea of the sort of scale of the business growth. And we're looking to kind of continue on that upward trajectory. I might just hand over to Lyndon for our last slide. So it's just to reintroduce Lyndon's our co-founder and CTO, started the business with him 10 years ago. He's kind of looking at the product roadmap and where we're going and sort of what's next. So Lyndon, I might just hand over to you, if that's okay, just to talk through that last slide there around what's coming up next and anything else you want to add as well.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Nick. Hi, everybody. So as Nick said, I'm the co-founder and CTO of Lab Group. So I'm very much focused on where is our product moving next. So what new technology, what changes do we need to make to continue on that upward trajectory that you saw on the previous slide in terms of our growth. So some of the initiatives that we're currently working on, as Nick said, we've got very well established product market fit in the Australian market. We're in the process of doing some regional adaptations to our product to extend the scope of the service into other regions. So at the moment, spending some time extending the footprint of our product into Singapore. So both the infrastructure to support the product being hosted in other regions, as well as the product itself, making sure that we can support onboarding of investors into different jurisdictions. So whether it's different compliance regimes, different ways of electronically identifying individuals or companies, those adaptations are really about extending the end-to-end efficiency that we're delivering to our customers in Australia into these other regions and jurisdictions. Part of our overall value proposition is integrations and being able to convert the application into an account as quickly as possible. So integrations are key in order to be able to do that. So quite a big focus on extending the existing integrations that we have to other systems, and then looking at ways of improving the straight-through processing ability to make that that application to account conversion process as efficient as possible. So beyond the electronic identity checks that we're doing, what additional manual checks happen on these applications before organizations are willing to convert that into an account? And can some of those checks be automated as well? So through the application process and the standardization in terms of how the data is captured, the electronic identity verification, and then adding in more automation into those checks, we're then able to deliver straight through processing to a wider network of integrations that we're building. Insights and benchmarking is all about delivering value back to our customers through reports so that they understand how our product is performing when used by their own customers. So what's the application completion rate? What's the electronic identity verification rate? But then within each sector of financial services, starting to create benchmarks in relation to what is the typical completion rate for a stockbroking application? What is the typical electronic identity verification pass rate for a stockbroking application? And is a particular customer performing at or above that particular benchmark, which may indicate that there's some further optimization that may be possible to deliver more value back to that customer in terms of how they're actually engaging their own customers. A lot of financial services applications result in money being transferred into an account. So there's a focus at the moment on more automation in the payment space. So once an application is completed, how do we get that person transmitting the money into the account as quickly as possible? So it's going via a traditional bank account. Maybe there's a 2 or 3 day process there. So through more advanced payment automation, leveraging APIs and other suppliers, we're able to provide more efficiency in converting an application into an account and then receiving the funding onto that account with more automated reconciliation of that payment back to the actual account itself. And then looking to further strengthen the overall process through introducing things like biometrics. So if you're providing name, address, and date of birth into an application, and that's being electronically identified, can we then reinforce that overall process using biometrics so that when that application is converted to an account, we've got as much confidence as possible that that's actually the person that we think it is that's actually doing that application, so that we can confidently go ahead and open that account. So a lot of exciting initiatives that we're working on, and all intended to provide as much value back to our existing customers and ultimately provide that value back through to their own customers so that they can continue onboarding themselves to financial services products in the most efficient and robust way possible.
Thanks, Lyndon, for that. And I just want to add to that as well around the identity component in general. We are an exciting time around sort of frameworks like the trusted digital identity frameworks. And one of the things we're actually looking at is the fact that we've got this distributed across a whole range of clients and financial services, and that we saw very early in the piece with the business where we had the idea around the fact that if you're the same individual using the LabForm platform more than once to engage into financial services products, and we have seen that. We've seen the same individual coming in 3 or 4 times into these different industry verticals. So we are very actively looking at how we can make that more efficient for the consumer as well. So the consumer can actually go through a check that's strong enough using Trust ID frameworks such as OzPost and things like that, where they can actually possess that identity on their phone and they can reuse the identity component. But not only that, they can reuse their entire lab profile in order to enter into financial services and products in other lab form nodes, if you like, that are part of our customer base. So that's sort of a realization of an idea that we had around this around 7-8 years ago. It's obviously taken time to build all those integration bridges and build up the instances and the client base as well. So we're actively working in some roundtables with our clients in terms of piloting across mutually beneficial industry and product verticals. So for example, a cash account provider and a stockbroker is a perfect example. And we're kind of already doing that in a sense in the way that we connect stockbroker lab form applications to cash account lab form applications by actually cloning and replicating that data across where it makes sense, which just makes it way easier for the consumer. That's pretty much it. There is one question coming through. I'm not sure, Osbiz, whether you want to take that and present it to me or whether you just want me to go ahead and answer it.
Yeah, Nick, thanks very much. And Lyndon, to you too. Well, yeah, actually, we've got a couple of questions coming through. So Nick, let's start with those. Can you expand on your revenue model and the key success metrics? Is application volume directly linked to SaaS subscription revenue for Lab, or there are other moving parts that grow that top line?
It's partially volume and partially fixed subscription fees. So we have the platform and there's connectivity, API availability and things like that. So think of your kind of like Salesforce enterprise license, kind of including things out of the box, like a sandbox and API access. So that forms part of a fixed subscription fee based revenue, but then we also have a volume based fee that's part of that as well. What we do though, we get clients to actually commit to volume plans. So rather than relying on monthly in arrears volume in order to charge that recurring revenue and have less certainty around that, 4 or 5 years ago, we actually converted customers onto plans, and all new business comes onto those plans as well. So they'll say, I'm gonna commit to the 100 application per month volume plan. That has a unit cost behind it, but obviously that allows us to charge that annually in advance or secure longer term discounted contracts that represent that volume. So it's a bit of a blend of the two, but we did want to still keep that scale factor to our pricing model as well. So, and it is quite a high proportion, the business has a high proportion of recurring revenue of that nature rather than project-based revenue.
Thanks, Nick. And during your presentation, you did refer there to the your customer growth, particularly taking off essentially from 2019. The question is in relation to COVID, did you experience growth in 2020 as a result of that retail and investor, or that involvement, so many new retail investors coming into the stock market? And I guess you sort of partly answered that, but maybe you can tell us if that's sustainable.
Yeah, look, our volumes pretty much doubled early last year, more or less over a kind of 2-month period. But then off the back of that, and that was very COVID related and sort of people piling into the market. But then what we found was a lot of our pipeline started to convert quicker because organizations were losing like whole operational teams out of Malaysia, the Philippines. So we actually started to convert sales more efficiently. Sales were getting signed off more executive level much quicker, and were being pushed at initiatives were being pushed for automation, digitalization at the executive level. So we actually think it changed the mindset of companies in terms of their focus on digitalization, how important it actually is. So the volumes kind of tapered off a little bit after the COVID surge, but they never went down to the level that they were before there. And since then, they've actually continued to go up. And then we had another surge around the whole GameStop thing early this year, which is again a little bit of another surge. But once again, we're finding that it sort of drops off, but then adoption goes up and automation goes up. And we're finding that that is another kicker for just a more consistent volume trend that we're seeing.
Okay. We're out of time, but Nick and Lyndon, thanks very much for your presentation. And thanks very much for joining us from Lab Group.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.